Chapter 13. Once more, the phoenix pulled Gil from his dreams. He blinked himself awake. His classmates were already in the hallway, by the sound of things, laughing and joking the morning away. He peeked down the hall. They wore fine jackets or handsome cloaks. Several were wobbling through a barn dance, doing some last-minute practicing, away from the girls. They seemed to lose their knees and elbows, teetering from one leg to the other, arms tense as tree branches, as they practiced. Gil sighed and closed the door. He didn't know how to feel. His own jacket and pants were ready. His cloak hung heavily over his chair. While the cloak had always been a bit lumpy, it was now so stuffed with oddments that it was knobby as knees. He wondered if he should empty it out for the day, just for the dance's sake. But Master Wix's voice was firm in his mind. An alchemist's hand is ever near the cauldron. Gil knew it to be true. He had come to love the weight of his cloak, the safety it carried. With a few drams from different pockets and a firm brindle, he could create dozens of effects. A minute at a cauldron and he could brew any of 24 potions. The knowledge brought comfort. His eyes rose from his cloak to Hammond's empty bunk. Part of him still did not believe Hammond had fallen into thievery. Hammond was his best friend. There had to be a reason. Surely the knights had caught him. They would bring Hammond to Master Vale for questioning, he knew. But then what? Suspension? Expulsion? He noticed Hammond's alchemical folklore book was missing from his nightstand and grimaced. It seemed misplacement of academic materials would be added to his record with the charge of thievery. The hour dripped by, and Gil's worry was washed away by a stream of fearful anticipation. Last night, Ray had agreed to go to the dance, the snowball. He had wanted this, of course, but only now it was occurring to him that he might actually have to dance, in front of other people. They would all be watching him, probably laughing. He eyed his lumpy cloak and imagined how it would swing around him like a sack of stones. It was one thing to sit at the Silver Smoke and talk with Rhea and Millie. The snowball was a different beast entirely. The noon bell tolled, and there were whoops and hollers from the hallway, followed by a stampede of boots headed downstairs. Gil sighed and changed from his pajamas into his pants, jacket, and cloak. Then he stepped into the hallway and followed the stream of jabbering boys going downstairs to the dining room. The room was busy as bees. Students clogged the floor, sat on and around the tables, hopped on the stage. There were bright dresses, polished chainmail, streaming cloaks. Through the mayhem wove bussers holding high trays of garlic bread and salad. They handed these to students at random and vanished back into the kitchen, only to reappear a moment later with another tray. A piper played merrily to Gil's right, a lutist accompanied a trio of singers to his left, 2 of which were plugged with garlic bread. The swell of students behind Gil forced him deeper into the room. Can't wait for the walk. What could be more romantic? It's true, you know. Oh yes, masters will be showing off at the green. I expect it's the only reason they permit this terrible dance, for a bit of showmanship. Great dome! Saw the snowflakes myself this morning. Snatches of conversation assailed Gil from every direction, bouncing overhead like thunderclaps, hissing like water over a campfire. He tried to step back toward the stairs. Something crashed into his shoulder, and a heavy squire shouldered past. Move, Rusty. More students flooded in, and now there were hardly any spaces to move. This one's for you, said someone nearby. A bowl of greens was thrust at him, and Wilkes vanished back into the crowd. Gil was surprised, but speared a few greens from the salad. They were quite good. A passing busser tossed him bread, and he finished his light lunch in a few bites. He stood awkwardly with his bowl, wondering where to put it. Everything seemed so disorganized. Why wasn't Master Drayborn coordinating the lunch? Looking around, Gil couldn't see the master's tall frame anywhere. A train of sleeves and braids cut off Gil's search. He was jostled farther into the room. Panic rose in his throat as his feet slid across the cider-stained planks. He would get back to his room. He had to. This was no place for him. here with all these people. He tried to set his feet. A broad smithing apprentice laughed and gestured wildly, catching Gil on the arm and staggering him. He tried to shout, but his throat was tight and heavy. The room was impossibly loud, chaotic. He stumbled toward the only bare piece of wall he could see. If he could just reach it, he could steady himself, catch his breath. A table cracked next to him as 4 students leapt atop it for a better vantage. It toppled before him, and laughter rang out like thunder amidst a heavy rainstorm. His shin barked against the broken table. Tears blurred his vision. A calm voice slipped beneath the chaos. Just a little farther. Steady hands found his, and he was guided around the table to the wall. He leaned against it and let out a shaky breath. His sight cleared after a few moments, and he saw Rhea's worried face. She'd worn a dark dress that made her hair all the brighter. He fiddled with the pockets in his cloak and cleared his throat. "Thank you. I don't do well with crowds." "I know," she said. "Really?" Rhea smiled. "It's obvious to anyone that knows you." Light swept across the flask as the front door opened. Master Vale stood in the doorway. Her hair was a spool of silver thread, and her robes were the green of a summer pond. She pulled a vial from her belt and sipped. When she spoke, her voice boomed over the room, which fell silent. "You have long waited for this day, no doubt, and it has come. Your enthusiasm," she eyed the broken table and puddles of spilled cider, "is apparent. Let us hope your dancing proves equally energetic. Before then, though, we must walk to the green. The walk is not far, though I think you'll find it most fascinating." She stepped outside, and students streamed after her. Immediately, the tension began to fade from Gil as space opened around him. He and Rhea waited for several minutes as the flask cleared out before joining the tail end of the walk. Gil's first outdoor breath was cold, fresh, and sweet with music. Far ahead, he saw the lone figure of Master Vale leading the walk, a river of dresses and cloaks trailing her. Masters lined the road, smiling and nodding, though Master Wicks was solemn as ever. Millie emerged from the herd of students and beelined for him. Her eyes were wide and her breaths were coming fast. "There you are. Hey, I need to check something before the dance. See you later." Gil expected her to return to the flask, but Millie and Ash disappeared back into the crowd. He wondered what she needed. There was a distant rumble, like bark over stone, behind him. He turned around but saw nothing. The sound deepened and roughened, like the groaning of a tree against a storm. Now other students were looking around, an uncertain murmur shivering through the crowd. It grew louder, and Gil realized a whistle overlaid the deep, scratchy sound. "Dragon!" someone cheered. Gil's mouth fell open. The dragon was green against the sapphire sky, wings wide and tail stretched. The wings, Gil realized, were not wings at all, but canopies of leaves and vines stretched taut, flush with red fruit. The tail was a tree trunk, which thickened into a torso and shoulders before erupting in a tangle of roots. The highest roots twined into horns, while the lower roots tightened into the dragon's head. The dragon soared overhead, and Master Vale's voice fell from above. "The apple dragon, Hazeltop's newest member." "She must have animated a whole tree," Rhea said wondrously. "Her focus must be incredible to maintain the animation of something so large." The apple dragon passed once more and settled atop the dragonry to watch them like a great owl. No sooner had Gil's gaze fallen from the dragon than something wiggled beneath his boot. Some students cried out in alarm, others in delighted surprise, reaching down. The ground underfoot burped. Gil stared. There, in freshly tilled soil beside his boot, lay a drawstring pouch. Gil opened it and started in surprise. Blackberries. "Better than me," Rhea said, holding up a tiny, dull orb. "This almost looks like a little glower, but it's all burned out." All around, students bent to collect their gift, a strange coin, silver on one side and gold on the other. Near it, someone donned a wide, flappy hat. There was a glowing vial, a wooden brush, a silver string. "A gift from the Yi Tree," Master Vale announced. Gil touched the pouch in his cloak with new appreciation. The pouch was soft, with short, black fur. The walk continued. Tiny knights of light jousted through the air. Others hopped from student to student, sparring their luminescent opponent. 2 landed on Gil's shoulder, light as leaves. Their twig-sized swords squeaked and dinged as they traded blows until one knight collapsed dramatically. Rhea looked shocked until the knight rose again, and they bowed to the onlookers watching the match on Gil's shoulder. Then they were off, jumping up the stream of students. They rounded the egg, and Gil saw the green, or at least where the green should have been. Today, an ice dome arced over the field, nearly as large as the egg. The ice glittered beneath the sharp sky, and Gil saw refracted images within the dome, a stage, stands, and the towering Yi Tree. Master Vale led the students through an archway in the ice dome. "Look at the snowflakes," Rhea breathed. Snowflakes fell from the dome to land on surprised students. Gil realized why as soon as he entered the snowball. "They're warm. Here." He lifted Rhea's hand toward a spiraling snowflake. It dissolved upon her palm. She laughed delightedly. Warmth flooded him once again as another flake met his hand. "My final gift to you today," Master Vale said in her gentle voice, and the amplification potion carried her words across the snowball. "Now, the other masters have something prepared for you before the dance begins. Kindly make your way to the stands and enjoy." She joined the other masters seated in a half-moon around the Yi Tree. The other masters of magic sat beside her. The masters of craft sat to her left, and the masters of arts to the right. Each master was dressed for the occasion, adorned with their position's crest. Master Flint, the defense teacher, was squeezed into a silver coat much too small for him, and it seemed his hair was slicked back with some kind of sword polish, judging by the shine. Students funneled into the stands, and Gil and Rhea found a pair of seats in the back, and then the masters of magic were striding onto the stage. Master Wix wore an alchemist's darks, which looked plain beside the master runist's patented robes. Master Horatio wore elegant blues. The 3 masters stood apart from each other. There was a span of silence. Then they moved as one on the stage. Master Wix produced a dark vial from his cloak and poured it into the air. It hardened immediately into a dark block and landed upon the stage. Master Nibley traced upon the planks, and a white block sprouted skyward. The enchanter murmured. Wind caressed the snowflakes and pulled them to his feet. They pooled and rolled into a smooth length of ice, which balanced on the stage. The masters looked between themselves and their opponents' towers. The alchemist began the challenge, casting a green flask toward the runist. Glass shattered, and the potion soaked into the wood. "That all you got?" someone called from the stands. Then a bright green line boiled up between the planks and spurted toward the white tower, racing along the gaps between the planks. Master Nibley traced a curve, which caught the potion's momentum and threw it toward the enchanter. With a word, the potion froze midair, a jagged length of greenish ice. Another word, and the ice-scape moved. The frozen potion glided across the stage toward the alchemist, pointed toward the dark tower like a finger. Master Wix smiled thinly, hand in cloak, and drew a ruby-red potion. Gil recognized the cork style immediately and turned to Rhea. "That's a mister. See the pin in the cork?" As he said it, Master Wix pulled the small pin plugging the cork. A small hole appeared, and the potion reacted with the air, spraying a red mist. The ice-scape disintegrated as it met the mist. Master Wix returned the pin to the cork, and the mist cut off. "Clever!" Master Horatio called and turned to Master Nibley. "Envigium!" The air cracked as several planks burst beside the enchanter. Students cried out in surprise, then wonder as the splinters hovered beside the enchanter. Drowsily, the splinters gravitated together into two prickly wooden spheres and drifted toward the other masters' towers. The runist moved first, tracing a dizzying series of concentric circles. The sphere passed through the first ring and shrunk to an apple. The second hoop reduced it to the size of a cherry, and then no bigger than a seed. The wooden sphere bumped against the runist's tower, but could not fell the block. The runist spun toward Master Wicks and traced a slender, unbroken rune. The air before her stylus blurred and warped, as though the very air were laden with magic. As the silver shimmer and orb of splinters floated toward Master Wicks's tower, he drew a blueberry bottle from his belt and cast it onto the stage. "Brindle," he said firmly. Blue flames licked up from the stage and stretched in a thin line. Strangely, the wood beneath the fire didn't seem affected. The splinter ball and slithering shimmer passed through the fire. The wood burned to ash, but the shimmer was unaffected by the flame. When it touched the alchemist's tower, the wood block was pulled to the planks as though by a great weight. Master Wicks stepped off the stage. 2 masters remained. The enchanter spoke. The runist traced. A dog of lines and shadows sprang from her rune and bounded toward the blue tower. A blade of brown grass pulled itself from the ground and hovered beside the enchanter. Light collected on the blade like dew, until the blade was a shard of burning gold. The golden splinter shot forward, arcing over the dog and piercing the dark tower. The block toppled backwards, a smoldering hole in its center. Students cheered, but fell silent as the dog leapt toward the final tower at the enchanter's feet. The lines of its body stretched. Its mouth widened. Master Horatio's voice was thunder. "Emporia!" The dog hissed into smoke from jaw to tail. The smoke resembled a dog for an instant as it glided into the blue tower, which gave the slightest shiver. Then a breeze washed the smoke away, and the blue tower stood tall. Students frenzied around Gil and Rhea, but he was quiet, amazed. It seemed Rhea was too. The masters had given a glimpse into realms of magic Gil had only heard of in stories. To think he may one day possess a share of that skill was inspiring. So busy was his mind that he hardly saw Master Vale repair the stage's scrapes and missing planks. The masters of magic bowed and left the stage. Master Horatio looked a little wobbly, but he was beaming nonetheless. Students laughed. The displays and inventions shared by the masters of crafts were lost on him. He listened with half an ear to the songs and poems celebrated by the masters of arts. The master of poetry read a thulpine, a strange form of poetry that would have confused Gil even if he had given it his full attention. A final ballad was played, and then Master Vale's voice eased Gil from his musings. "I hope your afternoon thus far has been entertaining, informative, and inspiring. I dare say these were as fine a walk and show as any I have seen, perhaps more wonderful by the yew tree's gift to each of you. Rarely are gifts bestowed. Keep yours dear. Now, enough of my chatterings. You've come to dance, to socialize, to celebrate your successes and failures of the term in style, if I may say. Additional food and refreshments will be brought in shortly. The snowball will continue until the 8th bell, after which the 3rd term students will join me for the sending. Wagons will depart from Greenton tomorrow at noon for any who wish a ride home." She smiled. "Enjoy the night. Enjoy the winter break. Hazeltop will await your return in the warmth of spring." A thundering wave of applause rose from the stands. Master Vale left the stage, and a dozen bards hopped onto the stage. Their lutes, pipes, and drums bore runes. Gil wondered why, until the first lutist strummed. Sweet, clear sound filled the vast dome as if it were no bigger than his room in the flask. A third boy hopped down to the grass. A third-term boy hopped down to the grass. A pink rose was pinned to his jacket, and he helped down a girl with another rose in her hair. Gil wondered if he was supposed to find matching flowers for Rhea, but she didn't seem to notice. In fact, she seemed more interested with the archway than the snowball itself. Maybe she was hungry and waiting for the food. Gil's stomach was a long way from hungry. 3 couples joined the first one on the green, then another 5. Soon there were 24 dancers twirling and stepping into the age-old barn dance as easily as an old pair of boots. The dancers looked at home, unworried by the eyes of 1,000 students in the stands. The thought gave him shivers. The bards rolled into a lively, toe-tapping tune, and students streamed onto the field. Seats around him emptied, and Gil sensed the time was now. Much as he didn't want to dance, he knew Rhea did, and that meant he could do it, even if people were watching him. As the stands emptied, Gil said, "We could go down there, if you wanted to." Rhea tensed beside him. "For the dance," Gil said quickly. "I mean, we don't have to. I thought you, well..." He broke off and glanced at her, but she was nearly turned around, looking behind the stands toward the archway. Her face was a mask of disbelief, her voice a whisper. "He said..." Gil looked through the dome of ice. He froze. Mist. Spewing from grates, pipes, and windows into a rolling wave swallowing Hazeltop, twisting toward the snowball.